To more news now. Calm has been restored in Mohlakeng, Gauteng, after days of violent protests against illegal miners. The angry crowd set a number of their homes on fire yesterday. They are blaming the illegal miners for increased crime in their community. eNCA's Moloko Moloto has been following that story for us and joins us now for an update. And so it would seem, Moloko, that today was a bit of a calmer day compared to the last few days. Does this mean that there's a sense of normalcy returning, or was this just a lull that has to do with, I don't know, maybe the public holiday and people saying, you know, let's give it a few days and see if the problem has been resolved?
Well, Tulas, we wouldn't know perhaps until later tonight or tomorrow if the residents would decide to continue with their raids and go and ban belongings, including shacks they believe belong to the so-called Zama-Zamas or illegal miners there and undocumented foreign nationals. But what is surprising, obviously, to us here is that as much as it's understandable, the rage and the anger, frustrations of these local residents because they say crime is rampant there, instead of focusing or directing their anger towards the state, which has the primary responsibility of protecting them. Because if you look at this whole thing, the fact that those mines are there unrehabilitated, it is the failure of the Department of Mineral Resources and Mineral Resources, which should have made sure that those are dealt with accordingly in terms of legislation, but also the whole policing is the responsibility of the police. That is why the district commander of the SAPS, who was there yesterday, Mr. Fred Kekana, was telling the residents during an imbizo there to say, please don't take the law into your own hands. Do not do the job of the police, because if you do that and you get it wrong, we're going to arrest you. So the South Africans should actually be directing their anger at the state, because it is the state that has allowed our borders to be porous. So we saw this morning when we went back there to just check on the aftermath, we managed to speak to, because remember, they are targeting in the main Basotho nationals. Yeah. So we arrived there at Bundu Inn. It's an informal settlement outside Mohlakeng, and we were welcomed by those residents there, and specifically Basotho nationals, who said to us, look, we did not flee. We are here and we fear for our lives, of course. And they burned down their belongings. They burned down their money, cash, they say, including their passports. And they say, look, we're not criminals. We're not so-called Zama-Zamas. We survive on odd jobs. Maybe let's listen to them as we were speaking to them in the morning.
Gona ga di sama-sama ga batho ba sebetsang kontrakeng jwale re bona nthona re amme le hape sa etsala kwano ya tsa bokua stop gona ga lukwa tsa go lwana mona ka nefanteno mona sekota camp puntwini ka nne ga tsebana be o tla tsela wa go bana go bua o thole ho letsatsing le ba tla kwana go hlasela jwale lo ya hai a ga tsena go tla ga ya jwang go bana ba tshitse ditokomane tsa go di passporto le di jwa ona ntho re jang ba tshitse diphofo tsa gone mona dintho ka go fela
pasa tsa gona di tshele le tšhelete tsa gona di tshele di phahlo ka go fela ona ntho e re apara ona ntho re jang ona ntho go gobalang ka yona go re ntho ngwe le ngwa gona e tshele ga ba ga batle re tlowe mona nana e se ba re tshisetsa matlo a gona ba re tshisetsa di phahlo bona ntho ngwe le ngwa gona hana jela re setsa ka tsaya tsemmeleng fela ona ntho re aparang ha ona ntho re jang.
So, Moloko, just for the benefit of our viewers who may have missed that because, you know, perhaps they don't understand Sesotho, what's the essence of what they were saying?
In a nutshell, they basically are saying, look, they have banned all our belongings. I mean, the man with a hat is saying that all the clothes that they are wearing is all they have left. They no longer have their passports. Going back home will even become more difficult, I guess, when they go through the border. That is, if they will be using that. So they are basically lamenting the fact that if we're not wanted, at least let them tell us to get out of the country instead of burning our properties.
So officially, as far as we can call it officially, the residents are saying that they are targeting illegal miners. The issue of nationality is not being foregrounded, but it's not hard to detect that there is that element that talks to the nationality of the people involved in these protests, that there's a certain, I don't know, unspoken reality that in many instances, these illegal miners that are being hunted down also happen to be, as you say, Basotho nationals, for example. But in all of that, if we park the illegal mining element for a moment and focus on the nationality issue, that has also caught some South Africans in the crossfire.
No, absolutely. I mean, obviously the people who are protesting, according to these people who were targeted, are people who are coming from the nearby hostel, others coming from the township, because the attacks happened within the informal settlement. And this gentlemen we were speaking to are saying, look, we stayed here with these people for a long time, and to prevent crime from happening in our area within this informal settlement, we join these locals who are living within the informal settlement to do the patrol. So they seem to be very much part and parcel of that particular area, the informal settlement. Now, as we were driving around, we found trying to identifying shacks that have been burned down. We actually found a lady who is from the Northwest Province. She's South African. Two of them, actually. The first one says in her yard, she had about 4 shacks. The big one, which is the main one, she stays in there with her family. And the smaller 3 ones at the back, she had rented a Mosotho national who has since fled. And she's saying he's not a criminal. And the other 2, she's saying she's using those as storeroom to put her furniture. So when these members of the community came in, they just set those 3 shacks behind her big one, on fire. Even when she's saying, you're burning my furniture there, my bed and everything else, they wouldn't listen. And she's alleging that there was an element of criminality as well. And her bigger shack also caught fire. Luckily, her and other neighbors managed to put that fire off. And on the other hand, you have a neighbor. She's also from Northwest. She's saying, look, my partner of many years from Lesotho, when he heard that the community members will be coming to attack, he fled. I don't even know where he is now. Sure. But let's listen to this lady who says she has lost her property and she is not a Mosotho.
Community ya rona ga e kgone go dirisana le rona. Ke ile ke ba bolella ke re go mo ga gona ope o dulang ke nna ke o dula mo mokhukung o. Be ile ba tshisa. Ga ba batle go raetsa ke ba bolella ke re mokuku o mongolo wa boraro olo motho a teng o khorometsa trolli o be ha bere ke bogomoja so ga ba batle go retsa ba ne ba re shupa le ka dithipa ba re batla re bolaya e re dula le banna ba rona ba Basotho re ba shuba ane bana ba kharepitsa tsa le ngwana o ile a lela ha ka robala le bosigo bo. Yeah. So rona mo South Africa ha re utlwane that is why batho ba ba tswang kontle ba tla gore bolaya because ga re utlwane ane tshweni ile e itatola motho gore e ka se ya phela le motho ka re motho o phetoga ga ntsintsi.
That's an important story to tell, Moloko, and this is a parting shot between you and I, in that there's been a fair amount of criticism of how we tell this story. Yeah. And its complexities. But I think it was important for you to tell that story, to highlight the fact that, it's complex. On the one hand, all of this activity we are seeing now, either by the community or the police or any other actors, somehow, one way or another, is justified as having been triggered by that gang rape that happened about 2 weeks ago. But within that, it seems the conversation around the gang rape and that investigation is taking a backseat, and you're now seeing more of the conversation around illegal mining. And at a certain level, it's understandable, I would say, because the communities believe that that illegal mining is linked to the spike in crime in that area. But then it's further complicated by issues of nationality and whether there's discrimination around people from one country or another. It just makes it all murky, and also speaks to this whole issue of not taking the law into your own hands and enforcing issues such as migration policy, for example. This is part of the example of why that can lead to a race to the bottom, a descent into anarchy. Yeah,
no, indeed. I mean, if you heard what the Gauteng Premier David Makhura said at the weekend during an imbizo there, he's admitting that, in his words, he's saying actually South Africa is ungovernable. The criminals have taken over. He's a policy maker. He ought to be protecting people, but he's lamenting. And I guess also we should also be careful of the PR by the authorities, because they went there, Bekicel and his entourage, they went there. And ever since those women were actually raped, I mean, this morning I reached out to the police spokesperson, Brigadier Brenda Murudili, and I said, how far are you in terms of making sure that you arrest? Because as much as over 100 people were arrested, she admits that actually none of those over 100 people so far are linked to the rape of those 8 women. So in other words, we're not even sure that there's ever going to be an arrest and successful prosecution of the rapists.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Spot on there, Moloko. Thank you for actually even highlighting that. And it's more than 2 weeks now since that rape actually happened, that gang rape happened. Well, you know who's going to get answers? JJ Daban, later on this evening on Power to Truth with Peggy Taylor. So be sure not to miss that here on eNCA.